Whether you've been playing the new TXR in bed on a Steam Deck with a controller or with a wheel, which I think is the most satisfying to whip buns on the expressway, there's some settings you're going to want to change immediately to get the best experience. I wish I would have known about these from the get-go, but it took me a lot of twisting knobs and dials in the settings to find out what these things actually do. It's interesting dialing things like suspension, your brake bias. Options is game settings. Autosave, there's no reason to turn this off. Gear shift by default's on automatic. Half the pleasure shifting your own gears. Pop that bitch in manual. This really won't matter for a while till you start getting in faster vehicles. Eventually, when you're in some absolute 1,000 horsepower rockets, you might want to bump this down to about 2 or 3 if you're sensitive to motion. Minimap by default is always north facing. I prefer heads up, so it changes with your orientation as you drive around. I initially thought and was hoping that these two options allowed you to have a button bound to toggling the minimap on and off, so if you don't want it on screen, you can turn it off, but you would have to come into the menu and disable it here. Measurement units by default are in kilometers per hour, as we're on the Tokyo Expressway, but I'm American, so miles per hour for me. If you don't need gauges, you can smell what RPM you're in. Go ahead and turn off your heads-up display with your gauges. This is the automatic rear view mirror that pops up whenever you're in, we'll say first-person view. It's not a cockpit view where you can see the dash and your arms or anything like that, but the inside of the car view. PC modders step up and make an interior camera. As an alternate view, you can have the bonnet. For those of you that are wondering, what the hell is a bonnet? A bonnet is the hood, just like the boot is the trunk. Since this is kind of like a fighting game, I do prefer to have the health bar, the SP bar, and the character's name and gang rival name displayed. Segments and speed traps I personally find beneficial. Speed traps, you probably want to leave that on. Text speed, I was fine with the average. And language setting, obviously choose your native tongue. As for graphical settings, I am on triple 4K monitors. I am running in borderless full screen. My resolution is actually double this, 11,000 something horizontal, but this is the game's maximum that it can recognize. And for some reason, I have to run in borderless because in full screen, it turns off my side monitors and I'm playing a single display game. Field of view, this can really mess with your sense of speed. If you're playing on a single monitor or TV, then you're probably going to have this quite a bit lower, but as I do have pretty much my entire peripheral vision taken up, I am at 90 degrees. Anything higher than that does kind of warp things on the side, I've noticed. But since this isn't a hardcore racing simulator or racing sim period, you don't really have to worry about dialing in the perfect FOV with a FOV calculator. This is kind of an arcadey game that most people are going to be playing on controller. I generally target 120 frames per second with these monitors, but I did bump it down to 60 and the game still seems very fluid and smooth. Since I do have the headroom, I might creep up to 120, but nothing seemed choppy. Brightness, I would recommend setting up your TV or monitors settings first and then doing your in-game settings. VSync I do leave on, which I'm using NVIDIA Surround, so it automatically defaults the refresh rate to 120. That's a little safety net. I do leave VSync on, so the PC won't attempt to go past the native refresh of the monitors, which is 120 hertz. I am at medium settings, despite the fact I do have a 4090, 64 gigs of RAM, and a AMD CPU that's not a piece of crap either. But as I am pushing 4K triples, it is very demanding, and this is a brand new release title, so I'm running it at medium, and it looks phenomenal. I did notice with the upscaling quality, whenever I went to native, it would not run the game. It would crash. I'd be able to navigate the menu, dick around the garage, mod my car, but whenever I'd try and hit the streets, it would crash the game. So I guess graphically that was a little bit too much. If you have an NVIDIA graphics card, I strongly recommend using Deep Learning Super Sampling, or DLSS, as it offers a lot more than these other options. Technically, it does a lot more than anti-aliasing. It can do things like down here, frame generation, which I cannot turn on because my FPS was not set high enough. But now this can cause crashing. If you're having issues, it's probably the frame generation. I do think an update will fix that little issue, or it might just be an issue that I'm personally having, but it is an issue for me. Global illumination, set that sucker to medium, as any higher does engage ray tracing, which obviously will tank performance as it does in any title. Shadows should be on a high, never ultra, as that does sap a lot of performance in my experience. And I mentioned crashing with the native option for upscaling, which technically is no upscaling. It's the native resolution. DLSS quality should be the cap, the highest setting that you choose, because even on a high-end rig, there's a chance it just crashes the game over and over if you're running it in native. Just use DLSS quality because TSR looks pretty ugly and jagged, but it still has a performance cost, so you're not really getting a perk or benefit on either either side, graphical fidelity or performance. And if you're running this on a handheld like a Steam Deck or a ROG Ally, low settings is a safe bet. The background music was blistering in the old ear canals, so I usually taper it between 30 and 50, although in battles it's still really competing with things like engine noise. So if you're not somebody that constantly checks their rearview mirror and you use the sound of your rival's engine creeping up behind you as an indicator, hey, they're trying to pass me, you're going to want to bump down the background music. When I first tried this game, I was incredibly let down because there was no wheel support. I was able to get a Logitech G923 working, but as a PlayStation 4 controller, so it was recognizing it as a literal hand controller. About a week later, an update rolled out, and now there is full-blown PC wheelbase support. As you can see, my SimMagic Alpha Series wheelbase over here, and you can bind all your buttons, which will allow you to navigate the menu and do pretty much everything you would do with the keyboard and mouse. There are more navigation options over here in the menu tab, so things like select, go back, zoom in, little UI interaction quirks. Now you will need to set up each one of your devices, so I have a button box, a handbrake, which is a different brand, so I needed to come through here and touch each one, but it does indeed work where all the devices are working at once, so yay. These are some very important settings if you are using a wheel to play this game, which in my opinion is the funnest way to experience it. These have made the game handle so much better. It's got me winning more races, crashing less, and feeling like less of a turd bucket. Handling dead zone, 0. As soon as you break neutral, you should be providing input left or right. Handling response time and handling return time, I have those at 0 milliseconds, instantaneous. This is only for acceleration on triggers. And then in my first video, I was complaining about the feedback feeling really numb, disconnected from the road, not really getting feedback of what the vehicle's doing. That's because by default, the force feedback is at 50. Crank that sucker all the way to 100 so the game's communicating 100% of what it has to tell you. And then you can control your wheels force feedback in the software. Steering angle correction, I played with this on and off. You would think from the description, leaving it on would be the play. Steering angle is limited according to speed. So the faster you go, the lower amount of steering input you'd have to give. So for example, in real life, when you're trying to switch lanes on the freeway, you barely have to turn the wheel. This didn't really do jack shit. I didn't really notice a difference. I'm leaving it off, but I'll get back to you later on that.